Hello, everyone. This is our second mental health conversations, mental health Monday conversations with the professionals. Okay, I am not a professional at all, but I am a huge mental health advocate, and as we know, this is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so we are bringing the awareness to have different conversations, and so this idea generated from my book, Forgotten, and how much counseling and mental health played a role in becoming the best version of me. So last week we had you talk to my counselor. We took you right onto the couch so you can meet him. And now this week we have Talea, and I am so excited to meet her. We are family by marriage.
Yes.
So knowing and learning about the awesome work that she does, I wanted to introduce her to you all. And with that, before we get started, we want to make sure we do all of the logistics and sharing and whatnot. So hopefully you guys can see. You got it shared to your page, Talea.
Let's see. Let me make sure it's on there.
And then I'm gonna put my glasses on because be able to see a little bit better.
I know that's my problem. Okay, we'll figure it out.
Okay. Cool beans. All right. So without further ado, Talea, and now I just produced. So if you guys been following the journey, I grew up in a DV home filled with domestic violence. And with my journey, I talked to you as Napoleon. I brought Napoleon in, my counselor in adulthood. So this week we're kind of journeying back to talk about kind of what teenage Tiff went through and teenage Tiff felt. And so Talea is the founder of and the lead therapist at To Emerge Counseling in Michigan. And her specific focus, which is why I wanted to bring her on and love it, is for at-risk youth, teenage girls and women only. And she's done a lot of mentoring programs and she's worked directly within the schools. And so I want to get her perspective, especially as we're coming off of Mother's Day and just being able to, I was a teenage daughter and I was a hot mess. All right. With the trauma added to it, I was a hot mess. And there may be I know there's some challenges with the teenage daughter's perspective and mothers. And with us coming off of Mother's Day, I wanted to bring Talea into the conversation. She has her bachelor's degree and her master's degree in early childhood development, and she also has her master's in counseling. So I want to ask her, turn it over to her, but I also want to ask her to kind of kick this off is what made you only want to focus on teen girls and women? Because a lot of mental health professionals, a lot of them will say, hey, I want everyone, bring the family from male, boy, but you specifically want to focus on the girls. You specifically focus on the girls and women. So what is it that you were able to tell us your why?
Okay, absolutely. Well, first, let me just say thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. You have no idea. I'm so excited to be here and share this platform with you. So my why, my journey. My journey actually started as a teacher. And during my time in the classroom, I noticed a need amongst our girls, just noticing that what they were dealing with every day and the things that they were doing. So I went to my principal and he so graciously allowed me to implement a girls mentor program. And from that point forward, I continue facilitating mentor programs for girls, and I still do. I have a passion for it, and I love working with adolescent girls. So after several years of being a teacher, I realized that I was burnt out. I knew I didn't want to teach anymore, but I always said if I was ever in a space and teaching wasn't my thing, that I would never be a disservice to anyone's child, and I would move on and do something different. However, the problem was I didn't know what to move on to and to what to do. So I tried other things and they just weren't, for me because I was not working in my purpose, right? So I went into prayer and I knew then that I needed to surrender and I needed to do what God had for me to do and to stop trying to do life on my own, right? So I studied, I read Purpose Driven Life, What on Earth Am I Here For? Awesome book. And as I moved in the direction of really wanting to do what God had for me to do, I was still and I listened. And
Right.
it was crazy, Tiff, because I kept hearing him say counseling, right? I knew I didn't want to teach anymore, but I knew I loved working with the kids, especially the girls. And I kept hearing him say counseling. And I'm like, am I hearing this right? Because that would mean I have to go back to school. Lord, I have kids. I'm too old, to be going back to school.
Yeah. Yeah.
But let me tell you, when God has something for you, he didn't say that it would be how you wanted it to be, that it would come in a package that you imagine, or that it would even be easy.
Yeah.
So who was I to tell him what I wanted, to do and how I wanted it to go? So long story short, one day after prayer, I clicked onto Facebook and a Steve Harvey video came on and it talked about how you're never too old to reinvent yourself. And I'm like, wow, it really resonated with me.
Yeah.
And I knew that I had to do what God was telling me to do. And I had to move on it. So I went back to school, went to University of Detroit Mercy, which was a challenging and rigorous yet very rewarding experience. Um, and during my time there, God put Emerge on my heart, both the idea and the name. And I remember to this day sitting in class and Emerge Counseling Services coming to me, and I remember writing it in my notebook. And so I knew I was going to move forward with Emerge. And because of my passion of working with girls, that's what I wanted to focus on, and women, because as girls evolve into women, right?
Yeah.
And also being a school counselor. So I moved on and I was blessed to, move on into school counseling actually before I even graduated. That's how you know when God has something for you, it's for you. A position became available at my school, which was a blessing because I'm at an alternative ed school, of which I love. That's my
Yeah.
passion, right? So that position became available. I went, I took the exam, I passed it, and I was awarded the school counseling position at my school. I began working as a school counselor. In the midst of that, I began Emerge Counseling Services. And
Okay.
I've been so blessed with an amazing clientele of girls and women. And I just love working with them to help them evolve, to build self-esteem, coping skills when dealing with different things. And it's just really been, it's been a blessing. It's really been a
Yeah.
blessing. I was able to even recently contract with Taraji P. Henson's foundation, which is
Yeah.
the Boris L. Henson Foundation, providing mental health services for those in need. And then, of course, this partnership, working with you and the Doves Network, is an amazing opportunity. And I'm really grateful for it. And right now, I'm just so thankful to be walking in my purpose and working as a purpose-driven counselor. And I love what I do with the girls and the women.
Yeah. Well, your services are definitely needed. Thank you for all that you do. And with that, I'm kind of going to segue a little bit into my book, right? So at the end of
Which was
chapter
awesome.
6, thank you. At
Loved
the
it.
end of chapter 6, going into chapter 7, like the last paragraph, I kind of talk about my circle. As I settled into my new school, my circle group began to grow larger, outside influences became stronger, and I
Mm-hmm.
began looking to my associates in my new school as my model of normalcy. So they didn't know about my dysfunctional home, but I listened to their stories and their social activities, and those things became much more appealing to me. So from that paragraph into the next chapters, you kind of hear how I succeeded with my academia, but I was very like into guys as my escape, and there was the anger that played with it.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you say to, like, how are you, I know you say you worked in the classroom, you're in the schools, but how are you able to tell that some other the side dabbles for instance, the side dabbles,
Mhm.
is really a symptom to a bigger problem that kind of points to home life.
Mm, that's a good one. And oftentimes, being in the school as well as in my practice, like I said, I noticed the need amongst the girls, right? Noticing like those side devils, as you call them, I like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, the attitude, the promiscuity, fighting, all those things, you know, and I just noticed those behaviors in girls. And it's real easy to just look at those behaviors and say, you know, oh, they're tripping, they're bad, right?
Yeah.
Something's not right. But what I prefer to do is pull that child aside and have a conversation. What's really going on?
Yeah.
And through that, what I've noticed, Tiff, is that these girls love tank. If you've ever read the 5 love languages, it
Hmm.
refers to a love tank. Their love tank is empty.
Yeah.
And those behaviors are a misguided search for love, affection, and attention, right?
Yeah.
In order to properly function, basic needs have to be met. And one of those basic needs is love and filling that love tank. And sometimes after talking to the girls and really understanding where they're coming from, you realize what's really going on at home and that the problem is so much deeper. And
Yeah.
you know, it's really time for a conversation and for something to be done.
Yeah. And so for me, my mom tried to do counseling with us, right? When I was a
Mm-hmm.
teenager.
Uh-huh.
And I was not having it. And because one, I felt like I couldn't share my truths and really, really be honest about what I was feeling about home life
Uh-huh.
and not get in trouble. So what do you say to the parent that's like, yes, my child just needs to go to counseling, especially with us mother daughters, like you have those hormones, you have like all of
Mm-hmm.
this going on.
All of it.
So what do you say to the parent that's like, we're going to go to counseling, this is going to be the resolve, like this is going to be the quick fix, but the child isn't engaging? What
Mhm.
are some tips and recommendations that you have for that?
Okay, absolutely. So first off, you know, when it comes to that mother-daughter relationship and you choose to seek therapy, that's awesome. That's a
Yeah.
step in the right direction. But just like yourself, most of the time the girls are like, I'm good. This was my mom's idea. So I'm just here, right? And
Yeah.
so you kind of just sit there and they don't really say much. So as a therapist, my approach, I need to get in touch with that child, right?
Hmm.
I need to build a rapport. And that's a huge part to therapy, especially when it comes to adolescents. It's building a rapport. They're not going to talk to you if they don't trust you. You know,
Yeah.
you may have sat there and then talked to that therapist because you're like, who is this person? Right. And if they don't trust me, they're not going to talk to me. So I need time alone with that young lady. So when it comes to that, that's good. Come to therapy with your child. I prefer to start off by doing, you know, we can sit down, we can talk, and then I need to do individual sessions. I need that child to know and to understand that they can trust me,
Hmm.
that they can talk to me and tell me everything. Because another thing is, they're not going to be honest with mom sitting right there, right? And I'm sure you experienced that. I'm not about to tell you everything, and my mom
Correct.
is sitting right here. But if
Correct.
you put her out for a minute, right?
Yeah.
And I know that I can trust you and you've built a rapport with me,
Yeah.
then guess what? I'm just going to spill it. And that's what happens with these kids. And so I have mother daughters that I see. And so once I build a relationship with that young lady and we have those conversations, first off, they need to know, and I stress to them that our sessions are confidential.
Hmm.
So that's a huge piece. And you should see the look on the kid's face when they know what so you
What?
can't tell my mama what
You're
we're
right.
talking about.
Yeah.
No, and sometimes you should see the look on the parents' face like, excuse me, what do you mean you
You're not
can't
gonna
tell
tell
me?
me. You're not gonna tell
And that's
me.
the reality of it. You know, there is confidentiality. Now, I do make sure they understand that there are terms in which confidentiality would have to be broken. And that would
Mhm.
be if they were a threat to themselves, if they were in danger or being abused, you know, or anything like that, then yes, then we have to breach confidentiality. But other than that, you have the floor.
Yeah.
Then I also would like to meet with mom, right? To get mom's perspective on things, build a rapport with mom. And then when the time is right, bring the two back together.
That's good.
And when you bring them back together, though, some ground rules still have to be set
Yeah.
because it can be a little difficult bringing them back together, especially sometimes when mom has to hear that truth.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have to sit in there and hear your daughter's truth, especially, like I said, when it is true. And
Yeah.
everybody is not ready for that. So sometimes I've had to tell a mom one time, sit on your hands, sit on your hands, and you're going to have to be quiet and you have to listen because that's what
Yeah.
a lot of these girls complain about. Nobody is listening to me. Not mom, not dad, not my teachers. So they're going out there just looking for love and looking for somebody to hear them. So I tell mom, I need you to listen. I need you to give her permission to be open and honest with you.
Yeah.
And then let her know you have her back, that you're going to work through this. That's why you're here. And then also letting the young lady know while you can express yourself, you can be open, you can be honest, you still have to be respectful, right? So it's a process. It's a huge process. And I love to use the analogy of an onion because I always say therapy is like peeling back the layers of an onion.
Yeah.
Who likes to chop up and peel back an onion? I know I don't, because it's a process that it brings tears to your eyes, so it'll make you cry. It doesn't smell too good. But what do you ultimately use an onion, which is your adversity, your process? What are you going to use it for? You want to use it to flavor your food. So we're going to use this process and everything that we're going through to flavor your life. And we're going to work this out. So it's a process.
That's so good. That's so good. So like, I wish my counselor back in the day when I was a teenager understood that, because honestly, I was written off as angry. She's
Mm,
angry. She won't open up. Like there's nothing
mhm,
we can do. And that made my mom even more frustrated. But I'm
mhm.
like, you have to know I can't talk to you.
Right,
Like I can't talk to the counselor with you there.
right.
Because again, like my mom was focused on survival. My mom was focused on trying to navigate all of the complexities with her and my dad. So it
Mhm,
was exactly what you said, a longing to feel heard, a longing to like, that's why my book is called Forgotten, because that is
right.
exactly what you feel like, especially when you have childhood trauma. The adults are trying to they're doing their thing, you're trying to figure it out. But it's like,
Mhm,
I need, hello, how can I
right.
say what I need to say in a safe space? So what are some, man, this is so good. So like, what are some tips so they come to you, you bridge them together, and then
Mhm,
they go home so they can sit on their hands, they can woosah while they're with you. But what are
mhm,
some good examples of, okay, here's what you can practice at home
mhm,
to continue to let your daughter's voice be heard, where
mhm.
again, daughter respectful. So what, I guess
Right.
both sides of daughter, how, what's some good respectful tips, and in case there's some mothers and mother and daughters watching, what's some tips that the daughters can do, and what are some tips
Mhm,
that the mothers can do that also put that blend in that healthy communication?
mhm. Absolutely. So you're right. That's a huge piece because one, you're not going to stay in therapy forever. And two, even when you're going through the process, you have to be at home with your child or with your mom most of the time. So how does that work? So when they go home, I typically, as a therapist, I give homework, right? So I say, this is what I want you to work on until I see you again. So it's kind of like an individual prescription contingent upon, the situation, but it could be something like communication skills, communicating effectively with each other. What does this look like? How should you communicate with mom? How should you communicate with your child? Like I said, giving them permission to be respectful, but to be open and to be honest with you. Things like knowing when you're triggered. And a
Oh,
child
that's
can
so
be
good.
triggered by a parent. A parent can be triggered, by their child. So what
Yeah.
do you do when you're triggered? When you have that feeling, you're boiling, and understanding, you may need to go to your own corners, right? It's okay to have a timeout. That as a parent, it's okay to let your kid have some alone time. You know, I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
give you a few minutes. You know, it's okay for the child to say, I think I need a minute. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ready to talk about this right now, but still knowing and understanding that it's still, you still need to talk about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So different things like that so that they can learn ultimately to function, because that's the big thing. You have to learn how to function as a mom, giving your child learning and understanding what they need. Like I have a lot of clients where I may have the younger sibling. And so the mom's expectations is that I'm like my older sister, but I'm me.
Mm-hmm.
So being okay with loving and accepting her for who she is. And for, like I said, just communication. Communication is so essential. And so working through that and teaching them how to communicate with each other and how to give each other, you know, what you need, even if that's space.
Yeah. So so good, especially the trigger part. That man, amazing. What do you're so you're not just also talking this. You are a mom
I'm a
of
mommy.
girl mom. You a
Oh,
girl mom.
I'm a girl mom. Yes, I love girls. Yes, I am a girl mom.
Yeah. So how do you find a lot of your, like, again, your passion, all of that bleeds into home? Do your daughters feel like mom's doing it, she's doing her thing, she's doing her thing to us? Like, do you find that, like, how do you really, because a lot of people that is not just textbook, so how do
Mhm,
you make that alive in your home as well?
mhm. Well, I'm gonna be honest. I like to practice what I preach.
Yeah.
And I'm really big on building a relationship and having a relationship with my children, right? So I always want my kids to be able to come and talk to me. Now, I will say this, and my kids will tell you, I'm not a perfect mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even as a therapist, I'm not perfect. I have
Yeah.
my flaws, my kids have their flaws, but we work through it. So I always try to practice what I preach. So do I sometimes, like, if I'm doing some research or looking at something, say, I'm gonna try that next time and see how that works on my own. Absolutely. Do they necessarily know that's what I'm doing? No, you know, they might now if they're watching this live.
My bad.
um, yeah, and my 17-year-old, but you know, may figure it out, and my 10-year-old. But you know, yes, I absolutely I have to, because then that's a huge part of counseling too, is being transparent with my clients, you know, to know, because they'll ask you in a minute, well, you know, do you have kids? Well, how does this work, you know, for you? Does your kid ever act up? Do you ever have problems? What have you tried? They want to know.
Yeah.
And so to be able, you know, to say, even though, you know, nothing's cookie cutter. So what works for me may not work for you and your child. But to be able to live through it
Mm-hmm.
is a beautiful thing, right? And to
Yeah.
be able to actually practice what I preach, definitely.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that was also the point I wanted to pull out for the folks that are watching. Like, this is tested and true, like tried and tested. Okay, this is
Absolutely. In living
like
color.
in living color.
Yes.
So, what are some recommendations? So now we don't have the school element. So a lot of times,
Hmm.
while we were in school, while the students were in school, what were some of the things that you were seeing? Not like to put out any confidentiality, but like
Hmm.
what were some of the things you were seeing in the schools and also within communities of color? Like a lot of times, I'll be quite frank because I'm a black girl, I'm a black woman,
Hmm.
we get brushed off as angry. We get
Hmm.
like our voices. What are some things that you've noticed in schools, and what are some things that educators can do that to help not fall into that bucket of, no, we should, pay attention more to, what our black girls are saying and what our, even our Hispanic and Latinas are
Hmm.
saying in these schools, instead of being so quick to write them off.
Absolutely. You know, to educators, because you asked, you know, what can educators do? Know
Yeah.
who's sitting in front of you.
Yeah.
Get to know them, learn your kids, which, like I said, I know that can be hard because you're teaching, you have so much to do, but you will be so surprised at how much you can get through to these kids if they know you love them, if they know they can trust you, and if they know you're interested in them, right?
Yeah.
So I used to do this activity called a shoebox presentation. where the kids would have to take a shoebox and they would have to decorate the outside of the shoebox with things that represent them, things that they like to do, things that, you know, maybe something that you want to be when you get older. Maybe if you like to write, you tape or glue a pen or a pencil. So it can be artifacts, pictures, words, anything that represents who you are. Then on the inside of the box, they would have to have one or two things of sentimental value to them. And they would have to get up and they would present these shoe boxes to myself and to the class. And when I tell you that was probably in an entire school year, the most powerful and just the best activity that I could do with my kids. I learned so much about them. They just come out and they tell you so much. And so I made, as a teacher, I made a point to take notes on whatever they said so that I can reference those things later. So maybe I find out that you love, you know, basketball, that you're a cheerleader, so that I can take some time out of my schedule one day and pop up at a game and see you cheer. So that I can come to one of your basketball games. Maybe you'll reference that you lost a parent or a sibling. And these are just things that I wanted to remember, because again, I did this at the beginning of the school year. So I would just get to know. So a lot of other teachers, we started doing this, and it was just so amazing at how much we learn from these kids. And once you make that connection with those kids and they love you, you love them, they will work for you. So it's very important to know who's sitting in front of you. And instead of jumping to conclusions, like you said, instead of looking and saying, okay, she's just mad, he's angry, which again is easy to do. And I know I've been guilty of it, you know, as a teacher, until it clicked like, okay, maybe it's more than this girl just coming in here all the time with attitude, or him just being mad all the time. And talking to the kid, pulling them aside, talk to them individually to find out what's really going on. You know, find out what's going on at home, send them to their counselor so that they can get one-on-one. And if it's any deeper, you know, they can be referred out to whatever they may need. But you see those things, like you see the kids, you know, cutting up, you see the drugs, the isolation. That's another huge piece in schools. It's those kids that get ignored, because some of the kids, when they're missing, like I said, when their love tank is empty, or they just have these things going on, everybody doesn't act out, so to say. Some go into isolation, and some are super quiet. And those are the kids that are often, again, forgotten, right? And so what do? You have to tap into those kids too, have a conversation with them, find out what's going on, send them to your counselor. So it's that educator, that teacher piece, that's a huge piece, but it's so powerful because the kids are in school longer than they are at home. Even though it all starts at home, they spend more time, you know, in school. So it's very vital for us as school counselors and teachers to really pay attention to who we have in front of us.
Yeah, that's so good. Now, for like right now, with stay at home, they're spending more time at home than they are at school. So what recommendations do you have for parents to keep an eye on their teenagers' mental health, especially the teenage girls that you focus on? What are some recommendations that they can have, not replacing counseling, but if they haven't opened up to embrace, yes, let me get my daughter into some teletherapy sessions, what can they do at home?
One, talk to your kids. Talk to your kids and spend time with your kids. And you will be so surprised how many kids will say, I don't talk to my mom, I don't talk to my dad. We don't talk. You know, when we're at home, I'm in my room and they're in their room. And so if you would just take the time, find an activity to do, right? Like me and my girls, we like to just play Uno or find something, you know, to do. But have that conversation with them and be careful. So one huge thing I would say about parents, and this is a thing, you know, with the kids that are not used to having this, or the parents that are not used to having these conversations with their kids, and now you're stuck in a house, right? Because you don't have anything to do. Like you said, you're at home, so you're not going to school. So also be careful how you're talking to your kids. A lot of parents, you know, We're the first ones to jump on somebody else for doing something wrong to your child. And a lot of parents don't realize that they are their child's first bully.
Ooh.
And you don't even realize it. The way that you
Ooh.
talk to your child, the words, the tone, the actions, the lack of time and attention that you are spending with your child, you can potentially be their first bully and you don't even realize it. So really being conscious of, the conversations that you're having, how you're having it. Like I always tell even my kids and my parents, it's not what you say, and we've all heard it, it's how you say it.
Yeah.
And so just being careful, because what we have to realize, what you pour into your child now will set the tone for your relationship with them. You're laying a foundation. And so you're setting the tone for your relationship with them. And not only that, but also for their future behaviors.
Yeah.
And that's why this thing is a vicious cycle, because a lot of times what happens, I either raise and treat my kids the way I was raised and the way I was treated, or I make a conscious decision to say I'm going to do something different, right? So
Yeah.
I would definitely say while you're at home with your kids, take the time, spend time with them. Make sure you're having meaningful and effective communication with them. And if you're paying attention, you're noticing that they're quiet, they're not eating like they normally do, maybe they're spending too much time in their rooms or they're isolated, then maybe you do need to seek therapy. And it's okay. And so that's what we're fighting towards, is ending this stigma, right? And I always say this stigma, it's like carbon monoxide running through our communities. It's a silent but deadly killer. And so be okay saying, my child needs some help. Be okay knowing that as a parent, not only do we not have all the answers, but sometimes our kids just need somebody else to talk to. Sometimes that's all they need, is to
Yeah.
talk. I've had kids come in and they just want to talk. They just want to be heard. They want someone to listen to them. They want coping skills, whatever it may be. So to answer your question, spend time with them. Be okay with seeking therapy if that's what they need.
Yeah. Man, that is so good. Listen, I'm like, this is gonna be retweeted, requoted. Like you hit great points. So thank you. So now my
Awesome.
question is, it's kind of, because when you say you can be your child's first bully,
Mhm,
not even
mhm.
intentionally, that is
Right.
profound in itself. So what do you say to the woman,
Mhm,
right, the mother who went through her own trauma, she's parenting
mhm,
through her trauma? What do you kind of tell her for steps where, like, even just parenting is overwhelming for her and she doesn't know? So like for my mom, she was just trying to survive. What do you
mhm.
tell that woman to kind of embrace the mental health, the therapy, like especially again as we're ending this stigma? What do you
Mhm,
tell her where she may
mhm.
not even be aware she's hurting her parent, but hurting her child
Right.
through her parenting because she's not present? She can't be
Mhm,
like, talk to my child. I don't know how to
mhm,
talk to my child. I'm trying to deal with
mhm,
all of this that's going on. What do you say to
mhm.
that woman?
Mhm. When it comes to that, it's exactly what you said. Sometimes she doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know, realize I'm doing this to my child. So if you are that a conscious decision to say, you have to ask yourself, do you want to do what's, like you said, you have to survive, realizing that this child is looking at everything that you do, not what you do. They're looking at how you're handling the adversity that's been thrown your way. So it's time for mom. And that's why, again, I love working with women too, because mom has to come in for therapy as well. And a lot of times as moms, we try so hard. And even like you say, your mom was going through so much. She was trying to be superwoman, right? And so The best thing that I know that I heard as a woman was, and I tell my clients this all the time, you may be a superwoman, but you're not superwoman.
Mm.
And it's okay to reach out and ask for someone to help guide you through this process. It's
Yeah.
okay, not just for your child, but for you. Because how can you be present for your baby if you don't have it together? That's a very, very difficult place to be in. That's a really difficult place to be.
Yeah. And that's good. So my next question will go towards the woman who doesn't have children, who is superwoman in the
Mhm,
office. She's like, now
mhm,
that we're working at home, like there's no work-life balance, but there may also be depression. There may also be um just she functions in the social scene. Like that's how she thrives. What recommendations do you give to her during these stay-at-home measures and even after?
mhm. Absolutely. So when it comes to, this whole stay at home, um, it's so many steps, that need to be taken. So if you're that woman and you are, that superwoman in the social scene, but in reality, it's a mask because you're masking the reality and maybe the trauma of your life. So sometimes you have to actually, as women, take a step back and spend some time with yourself. So utilize this time. A lot of people are like, utilizing this time to start a business or to do this or do that. Well, some need to utilize the time just to get to know you, to come to grips with who you are, to figuring everything out with you. And it's okay to sit back and go through that process. And that can be very uncomfortable, right? Especially if you don't know you. So you're now sitting with a person that you really don't know because you've been wearing a mask for so long. And that's what a lot of women do. So take the time to get to know you. If you need therapy, seek therapy. Take the time to breathe. Take the time to go on walks, to exercise, and just be able to identify and process what you're going through. Be able to feel, right?
That is like, so I kind of jotted down a question where with that, a lot of times, because and Napoleon had touched on it last week too, where he talked about it's that awkward first conversation when you think about the first time you have the conversation with somebody. It's kind of like I got to be vulnerable with you, and a
Yeah.
lot of times with us as women, I know
Mm-hmm.
especially for me, is when I started my counseling journey. And it was even more awkward because he was a dude, but
Mm-hmm.
we had the fork of the road. Okay, what are some tips to slowly allow women, especially if we're coming into a setting that it requires us to be vulnerable, it requires us to take the mask? What are some recommendations that you have to take that mask off and to trust the process?
Mm. That's a huge piece. Embracing the process, trusting that process, right? So the first thing when you get with a counselor, because you definitely with your therapist, you want to be vulnerable. You want to be able to spill your truth because as a therapist and sometimes you have clients, they're not going to tell you the truth. They don't want to work on things right now, right? We've all been there. But in order for your therapist to really get to the root of everything, then you got to be vulnerable. You do. You have to be vulnerable. So the first thing will be to make sure that you find a therapist that's a good fit for you. Everybody is not a good fit. And so even the therapist, like I'm always very honest. Before I accept a client, I do a free consultation for a couple of reasons. I want you to see if I'm a good fit for you. And as a therapist, I want to know if you're a good fit for me. And I'll be very honest, if I need to refer you or if I feel like we're not a good fit for each other. And as a woman, you have to be okay, you know, taking your time to look for someone and to do your research, talk to people to know who's a good fit for you. And once you find someone and you actually get in there, I think that that goes both ways with the therapist and the client in terms of building that trust. So some of that responsibility also lies on the therapist in terms of building the rapport with the client and for that woman to go in and be okay, trusting the journey, embrace the process, and know that you're there for you. And that therapist that you chose as a good fit for you is there for you as well. So being vulnerable is ultimately going to assist you in reaching your goals.
Yeah, that's good. Now, self-care is the big thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Self-care. And what are your thoughts and what are some recommendations on letting people know that mental health is a form of self-care?
Absolutely. Mental health is definitely self-care because you are taking care of yourself, right? And a lot of times we don't know how to take care of ourselves. We get so caught up, especially, you know, we're taking care of kids, you know, if you have a spouse or significant other, your job, business, whatever it is. And a lot of women are so used to just giving and nurturing, right? And so next thing you do, you look up and your cup is empty because you've been giving and giving and giving, and no one has deposited back into you. And so going to therapy, you know, will assist you in knowing and taking the proper steps. So first of all, that is the step in the right direction to self-care. Because like you said, therapy is self-care. And then being able to work through that process on maybe some other steps that need to be taken in your life. But that is definitely the first step in working on you and knowing what to do and setting boundaries. Because that's a big thing that I work with a lot of women on, setting boundaries for yourself. And that can be hard, especially with kids. But sometimes you know, you have to set your boundaries with your kids. This is mommy time, and being okay with that, and getting to a point where your kids are, you know, okay with respecting that, with your significant other, with your job, whatever it may be, setting boundaries for yourself. So going to therapy, that's a huge piece to self-care, because you just don't know how many pieces of the puzzle there are, right? And so when you go to therapy and you just start putting those pieces together and hope it all makes sense to you.
Yeah, that's good. Any closing thoughts that you may want to tell the viewers? How can, if they are in the Michigan area, how can they book you? I'll let you give your closing spiel.
Oh, okay, cool. So again, before we close, let me just say thank you again. This has been
Thank you.
awesome. This is
Yes.
absolutely awesome. So thank you for the opportunity, and also I want to thank you for taking a special interest in being an advocate for mental health. You truly appreciate it. So I'll conclude by referencing my favorite quote, which is, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. So if you're dealing with something, it's okay to seek a therapist, and don't allow anxiety, depression, lack of coping skills, or anything of the sort to become your carbon monoxide. And as I said earlier, you know, carbon monoxide is a silent but deadly killer. So don't allow those things to become your carbon monoxide. Love yourself enough to reach out and seek the proper treatment. And definitely, let's all work together when it comes to ending this stigma. And so if there's anyone that has, you know, adolescent girl, or you are a woman and you are in need of therapy and interested in a free consultation, and you can definitely reach out to me, which is 248, the number 2, emerge, which is 248-236-3743, or my website, which is the number 2, emerge.org.
Thank you so much. I say I
Thank
have a bigger
you.
thank you for you saying yes, for you showing up every day for these teen girls, these women. It
My
is
pleasure.
especially needed in a time like this. So thank you so much. Replay will be posted, and yeah, look forward to chatting with
Thank
you
you.
more. I feel more
Absolutely.
conversations will like come from this. So thank you so much, and we'll talk with you guys later.
Yes, have a good one.
Bye.